Hey guys, welcome back to Scuba. I am here in a Let's Build video, going to build my new base operations. Let's go have a look how that was done. Okay, so for this build here, I've decided to go for a very large scuba tank to kind of fit in with the whole scuba design. As you see here, I'm just clearing out some foliage and laying some foundations and removing some dirt and whatnot to make way for the giant scuba. I'm using an excavator, which on my actual build display, those few random blocks you see didn't actually get removed, so I couldn't actually see them until after I had to relog and redo a few things, so they're a bit annoying while building, but I worked around it by just placing a block and then that would display it correctly, like this one here coming up. I couldn't see that one until I placed a block next to it for it to appear. But yeah, all I'm doing now is just making the round base for the scuba itself, the scuba tank. One thing I found with making circles in Minecraft is it's incredibly hard. Like, I screwed up at this last little section here. I had to go around to every edge and kind of map out where it was. Ended up finding out that I put the far left edge one too long, and it took me a little while to figure it out. It's like, hey, it doesn't suit right. I don't understand why it's not lining up correctly. So I had to have the circle chart on one of my monitors while walking around and mapping out individually square by square. It wasn't until this section here I saw it was one too short, and I was like, oh, okay, quick, put it in, it's good. So what I'm doing now is I'm just laying some, just a little bit extra foundation for the scuba tank, just filling in the blanks along the side. I do come back to this later on and fix it up properly, but just in the kind of mean kind of setup, I just kind of throw it all together. Now what I'm doing here is the floor is going to be a iron block. Didn't really know why I chose iron block. Kind of fit the scuba tank well. There's a bit of a horse in the way there. But when I first built it, I was like, oh, it doesn't really look quite right. But after building the walls up and putting the little trimming around it with more iron blocks, it looked quite nice. Now the tool I'm using here is the Creative Builder's wand, which allows you to essentially grab a pattern and build up from that. It works quite well in almost any kind of situation. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm building the doorway into the scuba tank. Now, I'm using the Galactic Craft airlock frames. I just like the whole idea of the automatic door opening and closing. I thought about using just normal pressure pads and doors, but it didn't really look too right, so I went back and just decided to go stick with the airlock frames. Now I set the airlock frame opening section to 5 meters, so they kept flashing open, close, open, close, open, close. But it worked out quite well in the end, and it looked quite nice. But here's the second floor being built now. Again, just following the same pattern as the first floor, just putting the iron floor and then the yellow trimming around it, then using the builder's one to just make it up to a certain limit. One thing I did that I didn't actually notice until after I finished the entire build, I made the second floor one block too high without including the floor, but it worked out quite well with the windows I'm putting in now to actually work out that I have one block spare between the floor and the roof. Now what I'm doing now is I'm putting in glowstone illuminators to, well, just light up the floor really. They work quite well. I'm quite surprised at how nice they look. It's just really liquid glowstone that makes them work, which works really well. And they're doing the same thing on the bottom floor now, just going around and putting in illuminators just to make it so it's a bit lit up. A few monsters spawned in there, but they're quickly destroyed, and yeah, they died, so oh well, sucks to be monsters. Now what I thought about doing in this section here, the lighting didn't reach the corners properly, so I put in more illuminators just to match it up, and once that was done, I went towards the center pillar, and I'm using the open blocks elevators to move up and down floors. I thought about doing a staircase, but it didn't really suit with the scuba tank idea, so I left it to just elevators. Now, this design on the elevator shaft took me a while to really like. I first thought of just having like a 2x2 kind of entry section with walls all around it, but I didn't really like the idea of having it sealed off from all angles. So I decided to try a 4-pillar approach, and it didn't really look quite right in the middle. But then what I realized halfway through is I'd use a like a cobblestone wall to then use as like a cable management system. So what you see here is 2 cobblestone blocks either side with a 2 block center in the middle. Later on, they'll be used going straight to the basement to run computer cables, oxygen cables, all the cables you'd expect in a factory, essentially. Now that was just as a rough idea to build that kind of setup, but I may come back and change that later on depending how many cables I have up and down the center of the shaft. But yeah, what I'm doing now is just putting illuminators back on the roof just to give it more light, and there you see me just punching some holes in the roof to run the cables up. As I said, I don't know what cables I'm going to be putting in there just yet. It might be enough to have 4 places for cables, or it might be too small. I don't know yet, but as I said, I may come back and either expand it or change it completely. I may just have like one entire side as a cable section. Now what you see there, I was going to cut that out, the transition between frames, but the way it actually worked, it worked quite nicely to show a nice little half of the circle kind of setup. Half the kind of circle setup, that makes sense. Anyway, I'm glad I kept it in there because it worked out quite well to show you what it looked like so far. And really I'm just copying the floor below it now, just making it a second level. And I've decided to put illuminators on the edges of it to give it a bit of a vibrant glow at night time, so it doesn't look as bad. And I'm just putting in more illuminators now just to light up the floor and the roof, just to give a bit of character. Now what I didn't notice this until after I finished it. I put one of the illuminators in the wrong spot, so it didn't line up correctly. It's the one in the top left corner where it's not exactly lined up. I mean, I didn't notice it because it looks pretty spot on, but when I went to go test the cables, it looked fine. But yeah, I found out afterwards that it was wrong. But now I'm just the build isn't finished yet, but I'm just putting in some cable around it, or fences around it rather, just to as a safety measure. But yeah, this is a complete 360 of the tower. It's only about probably half finished now. And yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.